Long before Kylie released her single Wow, Bananarama had an album called Wow. Are you sad like me and find little bits and pieces like that really, exciting? I am one of those people. When Kylie released Wow, I thought, oh, Bananarama, wow. Funnily enough, there is no song on the album Wow called Wow by Bananarama, which bothers the small brain of Tim, I have to say. It was released in September of 1987. It is a Stock Aitken and Waterman classic. It is just brim to brim of that sort of guff, that sound of the late 80s. And to join me to talk really briefly about this classic album, I have Megs and Lee from the United States. Welcome, Lee.
Hello.
First time.
It is, yes. And I'm from, not the United States, I'm from the UK.
Oh, did I say United States?
Yeah.
Oh, no. That's terrible. How embarrassing for Lee. I mean, I definitely meant United Kingdom. How are you, Lee? And tell others, how did you find us? Because I'm always encouraging people to reach out to us, because this is the everyday man's podcast and woman's podcast. How did you find us and how did you get in touch?
I think I must have seen you on a lot of different groups on Facebook. I'm sure it's either a Stock Aitken and Waterman group or a Kylie group. I think it's one of those.
Yeah, and then you reached out because you had something to say, which is good.
I love pop music.
Yes, that's what we're all about, isn't it, Megs?
Yeah, that's our big passion.
Now, Megs, before we go any further, a big announcement today for the people that listen regularly to us, of which there are dozens now. Isn't that exciting? You've turned 18.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yes, a few days ago I turned 18 and now I can go into... it's different in Australia to most places, but I can drink alcohol in public now, so that's very exciting.
Well, I've been allowing you to do that since you were 9, but absolutely legally you can do that now, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And like Frank Spencer often says, I'm a man.
Yeah, you keep saying that, but I just consider myself a young man or a young adult. I don't feel like a man yet.
Well, you're wearing the beret, though, and that's a good start.
No, I'm not.
This is excellent stuff. No, it's very exciting. I was like, honestly, for everything that I say, it was a very emotional time for me. I actually didn't cope in the days leading up to your 18th birthday. You were with your mum a lot, not here, so I got to go fetal without you watching. It was a big thing to think back about when you were emerged via tongs and prongs into this world and your head came out like Mr. Whippy Cone. It was, I got to reflect on all of that and where did the time go, right?
Yeah, I know. It has been, it is crazy. It really crept up, didn't it?
It really did creep up.
Yeah.
For you, possibly not so much. You were living the childhood, but for me, yes, it crept up.
Yeah. No, it came out of nowhere for me too. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I know. And come on, I usually wouldn't do this. And apologies, Lee, just on the sideline there. This is really rude. Mr. Lee from the United States. Tell us, what surprise did you get over there?
Oh, yes, I got a new car. I got a car for myself. It's amazing.
I know, and we're hardly the Packers, so this was a big thing, you know, to scrape together something. So, but I tell you what, if anyone has not, some children ask for a lot. They're very demanding. You never ever have. So your mum and I were like, no, you know what? He probably deserves this.
And I was extremely surprised because everyone was saying, weren't you expecting something like that? And I was like, no, I had no idea whatsoever.
Well, you go to a school where half of the student population would just expect something like that. But for us, you know, where we
what kind of car is it? What kind of car have you got?
It's a Toyota Corolla. I think that's how you say it. I'm terrible with all the names. But it's a little silver car and it's beautiful and it drives very well.
Do you know what's funny, Lee? He doesn't have a license yet.
Oh, no.
Well, I have my L's. I can drive with my L's. So I just can't do it on my own yet.
You know what we're doing, though, Lee and Megs? Anyone who's clicked on this because they saw the word Bananarama, they're just rolling their eyes and go, what the hell is this garbage? What the hell is this? I mean, come on, can you start talking about wow?
If they know us, then maybe they'll care.
If they know us, but most of the people who click on don't. Welcome, Bananarama fans. You are a steadfast group, I tell you, because this girl group still exists and they're only releasing music every couple of years, and it's very hit and miss. Their last album was, the single off it The 2 singles I think there was
Stuff
were,
like
were
that.
really quite good, stuff like that. Yeah, were really good. But the album, yuck!
Really?
Wow! It made me dry reach,
Dad.
whatever you say.
Oh,
That'd be so
no.
harsh.
Well, no, it was pretty bad. I listened to it once, and usually I give everything a go 3 times before I can make up my mind.
I wonder
Yuck.
if anyone disagrees with you.
Well, if they do, I'm sure they'll leave me slanderous comments like they usually do. That damn Australian and all the nasty things I've been reading over the past couple of weeks. Thanks for that, by the way, guys. Keep leaving those nasty comments.
Yeah.
It's particularly good when I'm fetal with my son about to turn 18 and I put the iPhone to my face and through tears I look at, that nasty asshole Australian.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's so sobering. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. New albums aside, Wow is an amazing album. Lee, what do you make of Wow? Because you're of that vintage, aren't you, where you were around when this was first
I am,
released?
yeah. It was one of the times when I kind of it was my first album, and I have it on vinyl, and I still have it somewhere in the attic. I loved it. It was.
So why is it in the attic?
Well, because I don't have a record player anymore. I didn't embrace the kind of, bringing vinyl back. I just remember it from, back in the day when it was a bit scratchy, a bit jumpy. So I have certain albums displayed on the wall in frames, but I obviously don't have a record player. But no, I loved Wow. It was proper pop music. It was really up tempo. The videos were great.
Yes.
It was kind of like when Bananarama became properly pop. They'd gone away from the kind of sulky sort of punky indie types to embracing that pop.
So let's do a bit of an education here, Lee. You and I, feel free to chime in for Megs, who's only just really listened to this album for the first time. Bananarama, funnily enough, did not start out like they are like the symbol of sugary pop, right? That's probably how you see them. They started off as 3 friends who wanted to make alternative, sort of just whatever type of music they wanted to, grunge, indie, garage band, and they sort of thrived in their early career for being really amateurish, but somehow captivating. Yeah, and yet they went through, as you have been well educated by me previously, into the pop machine, and they came out the other end with something like Wow. Now this caused all kinds of conflict for Siobhan. I think that's how you pronounce it, Lee. Is that right?
Yes, it is, Siobhan.
Yes,
and
with Stock Aitken Waterman.
And I'm telling you, we should both get our hands on a book, if there is one, around the recording of this album and before, because it is the stuff of legends, her and Pete Waterman going at it. At one stage in the studio, this woman, who I could totally respect, although I think it was rather immature, she, amongst the many, many delicious stories you can find, at one point she thought that these people, Stock Aitken Waterman, put the word love into so many songs that she absolutely refused to sing the word love. So when it got in the studio, the 3 of them singing together, she would literally cover her mouth. No, she'd leave a gap. She'd cover her mouth with her hands and refused to sing the word love.
Oh my God.
It's just amazing, lovely. It could happen in the late 80s.
She was still very punk, though, wasn't she? And she kind of accepted. She quite liked Venus, which is the first sort of production they did with Stock Aitken and Waterman, didn't they? But this was a bit too glossy for her. And I think one of the songs in particular, Strike It Rich, she really did not like it. It was kind of like everything that she wasn't as an artist. It was all, very much about making money and that ethos of the 80s. And I think that was probably, from what I understand, one of the kind of final straws in her involvement in Bananarama.
You're spot on. That's exactly around the point. But funnily enough, right, get this, right? This album is going mega, like, what do they call it? Gangbusters. In America, they use that expression. Yeah. It's going gangbusters. She leaves before even all the singles are released. Like, I Want You Back, right, Megs, is released. Yeah. And no internet back then. In Australia, I'm watching it on Rage, the ABC music video show, and I'm going, gee, that woman's changed a lot. That one on the end. What the devil's going on there? And it wasn't until decades later I realised, hang on, they replaced the poor woman.
Yeah, with some other lady. Jacquie O'Sullivan, I was reading.
Yeah. We never felt quite part of it.
Was she good, though?
Oh, well, she describes her experience with Bananarama as that she always felt like the third wheel. She doesn't go as far as to say they treated her poorly or coldly, but she always feels like she was just reined in at the last.
Yeah. I don't
Lee's
think
story about this. Go ahead, Lee.
I don't think she ever kind of made any decisions, from what I understand. I think that the other Sarah and I've forgotten her name. What's the Sarah?
So have I, Lee.
I'm looking at a picture now and going, well, that's Sarah. That's Siobhan. No, that's Jacquie. Who was the other one? How ridiculous! I'm going to.
Oh, can you imagine the Bananarama? You're going to get one of the comments I usually get.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
So it was Karen. Yeah, Karen. Right. Karen and Sarah, they used to kind of make all the decisions about the videos and the, what tours and stuff, and Jacquie just kind of went along with it. She was kind of like an employee rather than a member.
Yeah, and you would feel that way if you'd come in late and they already had this dynamic and knew what they were doing.
She was so excited when they asked. I mean, why wouldn't you be? It's like they're on the back of this successful album and they're like taking off. In America, Venus had, they were a big pop group. In fact, I don't know, I get this one, Lee. This is really strange. In the Guinness Book of Records, listed as the most successful girl group of all time, which sounds like a load of old tosh to me. The Guinness Book of Records is a load of old tosh. That can't possibly be true. But nonetheless, they are listed as that. So she didn't hesitate to get into it. That Strike It Rich story that you told, Lee, reminds me a lot of Madonna's Material Girl, because she...
Yes.
Not that she fought it at the time of recording, but she came to really... be concerned.
Message.
Yeah, because she said people didn't get the irony of it.
Yeah,
much like this lady, I'm sure, didn't get that. Strike It Rich is, you can interpret it many ways. It doesn't have to be about money. It could be about, if you have a hard time in love, then keep going until you find it or whatever. I mean, it's just classic SAW.
Yeah, and it's a shame she left, because like the other two were willing to sort of evolve and move forward into a new sort of genre. And, it would have been good if she'd stuck around. Like, it seems a shame to me.
Funnily enough, they never had really big success after this album. I mean, that some fans would be booing me for saying that, but they never reached the dizzying heights again. Yeah. What stands out on this album, Lee, for you? I mean, there was some killer singles off this, wasn't there?
There was. I'm surprised it didn't. The actual album wasn't as high in the charts as I remembered it. I remember it being everywhere, but I think it kind of only got into the 20s in the UK. But yeah, there was a lot. There was like a run of like their most popular singles. I Can't Help It, I Heard a Rumour, Love in the First Degree, Nathan Jones, and I Want You Back. Massive singles. I really liked the album version of Nathan Jones, because it kind of went on for about 5 minutes or so. But it was more. It sounded, I felt, better than the single version that they released.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've been listening to the album version. The one thing I didn't realise until recently is, okay, you said it was one of your first albums, or possibly I think you said firstly. For me, I had a little cassette drawer, which cost me $5, and that was a lot. That was all my savings. And then I started putting my cassettes in there, right? 3 drawers, very satisfying. That's when I started... been introduced to the world of cataloguing, quite frankly. And my first cassette and only cassette out of these 30 slots in the drawers was Kylie, because that was my first ever album. I sort of won that. I won a Father's Day competition. My dad won a $100 voucher, and he said, "Do you want anything?" And I had never realised, a bit like you, I didn't really ask for much. And I said, "Oh," and they bought me the Kylie cassette. Anyway, Bananarama Wow was the second cassette I had, and this is quite a short album. It only goes for about 40 minutes, but it was delicious. The whole thing was amazing from woe to go, frankly. I don't think there's many fillers in there for me.
And from what I'm reading here, it went really well in Australia compared to everywhere else. Like, we just sort of lapped this one
as usual. Albums that aren't as successful in other territories, they do well in Australia because we have the best taste. Impossible Princess was one of them by Kylie.
Yes, it looks good for us. I like that a lot.
I did. We pick up on we have taste, Lee.
You do. I have to say that. Although I'm going to question Peter Andre, but it's not about him today. It's about Banana.
Hang on, he's definitely not Australian. We have this habit in Australia of saying, like Russell Crowe, probably New Zealand, but we go, no, he's Australian. He's good.
He's found
Peter Andre, who probably technically is Australian, we like to say he's probably from the Greek islands.
right.
We've definitely disowned Peter Andre. Although I've seen him in interviews, he seems like a lovely man. Unfortunately, after all this time of thinking that wiggling man with the open shirt from back in my day turns out to actually be quite a nice man. I saw him interviewed on some YouTube video recently. Anyway, we digress. So again, we're not going to go track by track. For people who are familiar with our podcast, we usually go for an hour. We're not doing that with these. These are short, sharp, snappy, just overviews of albums. And we're going to give it a score. How juvenile is that? But before we do, what's your standout track, Megs, for this? And what are the duds?
Well, for me, Love in the First Degree has to be the standout because me and Mum really like this song together. It's sort of like a memory song for me.
Oh, look, if your mum likes it, then it's probably in the dud pile, isn't it?
No, we have this video clip CD at home, which has all
like
video clips from the 80s and 90s. Yeah, and Mum loves this one to death, and so do I.
Do you know how many people, I know this is quite inappropriate, have like it cause some sort of sexual fantasy? This is, like, hear me out on this. Without all these, I've got about 5 people that I know, unrelated to each other, don't know each other, who've said to me, and I'm talking all sexual orientations too. I know 2 straight guys who've said to me, oh, back in the day, that film clip, I used to dream about that. I used to wake up. I think it's something to do with the whole prison thing. And you know.
It is a scenario that they set up in the video clip, I guess.
But then some gay friends that I have too talk about the dancers in it being their sexual awakening.
Oh, right.
Oh,
and even your sister, who's 10, she watched it for the first time.
Yes, and she was scandalised.
She was scandalised. And I'm thinking, compared to, what's that cat woman?
Oh, Doja Cat.
Doja Cat. Like, I'm thinking, seriously, this is nothing. But she got down and did the movement. And when Lacey did it on the floor here, I went, stop that, cut it out. That's really not okay.
Yeah, no, and I never actually saw it that way, even for a second. I was just always in love with the music.
Not until you saw your 10-year-old sister down there doing that funny crawling thing that they do in that video clip.
That was just supposed to be a funny thing because then they can pop their heads up.
I know.
It's just a light-hearted video. But anyway, it's
until a 10-year-old does it.
Yeah, I love that video and love the song, and it's just got a lot of good memories for me.
Any duds?
No, and I would also say that's probably not my favourite song in terms of the music on its own. If you didn't have the memory attached to it, I'd say I Can't Help It might be my favourite.
That's that's the opening track, I think, isn't it?
I don't know. It's one of the singles.
I think it is. Yep.
Yeah, and I just love it.
I love it too. And the film clip seems like, at the time for me, deliberately, I'm sure, but it seemed like a little bit more grainy and unpolished. But that's interesting. And Lee, over to you. Like, what do you see as the standouts here, and dare I say the duds?
Oh, well, for me, it was "I Want You Back," which is, I think, is the last song on the album, mainly because they had this ridiculous dance routine that they did, and I can still do it now. Whenever this song comes on, the chorus bit, I can launch into that dance routine, and it's just a great pop record. The one that I wasn't particularly keen on, which is the one that I would always skip, would be "Once in a Lifetime." It's kind of I don't think Stock Aitken Waterman did brilliant ballads, to be honest with you, and it's okay, but it's not my favourite.
Feels a bit obligatory, doesn't it? Like they felt like they had to put one in somewhere. It's a sweet song, though. I mean, yeah, but I would probably be, funnily enough, Lee, and I mean this quite sincerely, the same two that I've got jotted down. I Want You Back because if anyone knows me, they know the more sugary and poppy it is. And the video clip was absolutely way and overtly over the top. I think they paid homage to some of the Motown singers.
Yes,
is that the one? Yeah. And for me, there are no duds. But if I had to pick a dud, I don't want to pick a dud because I'm looking at them all, going, I love them all. I love Come Back. Although sometimes if I skip, I might skip that one. Strike It Rich, funnily enough, maybe because I've heard it so much. I think I'm with you. Once in a Lifetime would have to be the dud. But isn't it good that we struggle to find it as well?
Yeah.
I'll be honest, like there's a couple in there that I'm not a huge fan of like Some Girls.
Don't you pipe up from the sideline? You had your shot.
Yeah. No, well, I'm just saying, like, a couple of them, they didn't really grab me very much. Maybe I'd need to hear them a few more times.
Well, be specific. Which ones?
I think it was Some Girls.
Now that's sacrilegious.
Yeah, and maybe once in a lifetime. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just I think the singles are the ones that I really like.
Well, if anyone wants like a healthy slice of 80s, early 90s Stock Aitken and Waterman classic, this is an album like it. Like the only ones that would be more prime examples, possibly Rick Astley, Jason, and Kylie, I would say.
And it never slows down the tempo, does it? They're all upbeat and fast.
Well, once in a lifetime. Yeah.
It slows down a bit.
Yeah.
And I think it was good because it was Stock Aitken and Waterman, but it wasn't that at that stage where they'd gone really, really formulaic and everything sounded the same. There was still a difference in the sounds of some of the songs, which was good.
Can I tell you, Lee, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because to me, I always wondered where that came from. And now that I've done research more recently, I've seen, with the advent of YouTube, you can go back and see all of them telling their stories. I would say that might have been part of the, in inverted commas, negotiation between the ladies and Stock Aitken and Waterman, trying to find that middle ground of this is too sugary. So I agree. When I listened to it, I felt like, dare I say, this was actually edgy compared to the music I was listening to at the time. Some of the track, like Strike It Rich, even having the word bitch in it, which I would have thought was unheard of on a SAW, which is why I thought that lady might have liked that song. But some of the, I don't know, there was a slight, not harshness, but there was an edge, wasn't there, Lee? Something slightly, not less formulaic, as you say.
Yeah.
Have you heard, by the way, Lee, I Want You Back has the demo version on some of the new re-releases? It's called something else.
Yeah,
and it's strange.
Yeah, because they used to do a lot of different versions, didn't they, of songs that then became something else. I don't mind it. I prefer
the whole chorus was different though. You don't get the words "I want you back." It was something like, I can't remember. Disgraceful that I can't remember, but the whole chorus was different. The verses were the same.
I have to say, I did go and see the girls when they reunited a couple of years ago. So the original lineup, and they did all the singles off this album, and it was pretty good. I think you can really tell which is Siobhan's voice. I think once Siobhan left, you can't really differentiate between the two girls' voices, but when Siobhan's singing, you can hear that.
100%. And what's really interesting about Bananarama, unlike other girl groups or possibly any of them, they don't have solos. They were always singing together throughout the whole track. And if they ever did have a solo, and I'm sure someone will leave me a comment and prove me wrong here, but it was it was a rare occasion. They just sung together.
Yeah.
Please let me put an honourable mention in for a song that I had never heard until I went back for the sake of this podcast, and I listened to a different version of the album, some deluxe version or something.
Versions.
Oh, there's too many. It's just stupid, frankly. But there's this song that goes the whole time, right? And I'm thinking, this is bizarre. And then it's like dirty, 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 dirty. It's one of the funniest songs I've ever heard. I was actually laughing hysterically on my way to work. It's called Mr. Sleaze.
Oh,
and
Sleaze.
It is just ridiculous. Like if you wrote that about a woman for a start, like Mrs. Slut or something, I mean... And it's just like, he's dirty, 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 he's unpleasant, he smells. He's dirty, 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 he's unpleasant, he smells.
And I'm
unbelievable.
There's like a Rare Groove remix here written on...
Of Mr. Sleaze?
Yeah.
What, they remixed that?
Maybe that was a remix you were hearing even.
It was a big hit in the clubs in the UK.
Was it really?
Yeah, it didn't get into the charts, but it was a hit in the discotheques, as we used to say.
It sounds so not what they were doing. It's like the opposite of what they were doing.
Pete Waterman would have just fallen over and clutched his chest if he heard that.
Do you think it possibly could have been about Pete Waterman? Could it have been Siobhan's swan song?
Oh, that's so rude. Poor Pete. I don't think there's been... He's one of the few people from that era who hasn't been caught up in the Me Too movement. But thank you very much, Lee, for bringing him into it. That's brilliant.
Poor him.
Poor Pete Waterman. Hey, listen, Megs and Lee, thank you so much for talking about WOW. We're going to wrap it up with a score, a juvenile score. We're on the playground now. We're in year 6 again, Lee, all right? And you've just said, what do you give it out of 10?
Oh, can we do half points?
I'm doing a quarter, so you can.
You're doing a quarter. I'm gonna give it 8.5.
8.5. That's really good.
8.5. Yeah.
You must really
it's
like
good
it.
pop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Megs,
I give it an 8.
give it an 8.
Yes.
Solid 8.
Solid 8.
Okay, I'm going to go 8.25.
Oh.
For God's sake.
Just because when I was on the playground, I always wanted to be different and annoying.
Yeah.
By the way, I had a chicken stock cube container with the chicken stock cubes have been used, and that's where I used to save my money, like my pocket money. And I remember buying Enjoy Yourself by Kylie. I saved in that chicken stock cube jar for months until I had enough money. I gave it to my dad. He went up to Bondi Junction to get Enjoy Yourself on the very first day because I had nailed it when it was coming out. And he bought a copy for my friend gave him money too. Brought back one copy and a blank cassette and said, you can just copy yours from his. You'll save a lot of money that way.
Oh, no.
There were tears and tantrums.
Yeah.
And yes, my head was in the pillow.
It's such an accurate story because he's so practical, but you like the mystique of the whole thing.
Oh, man, it had been a big investment, like of time and money. Like that stock cube. I think the stock cube jar got chucked across the room. Anyway, that's a whole other story.
God.
And I'm giving away too much. Hey, Lee, this was your very, very first time on Time to Talk. You've been awesome. Have you enjoyed it?
I have. I've loved it. It's great to talk about music that you remember really fondly from years gone by. So yeah, it's been wonderful.
Different times, right? Much simpler, happier times.
Yeah.
What do they say? BC, before children. Cameron, Megs,
What?
have you had a good time?
Oh, yes. I didn't know you.
I hadn't asked you a question, actually. I'm looking at you with a question mark, but I hadn't asked one.
His one was specifically for him. But yes, no. I really enjoyed it. Yes, I love talking about music and Bananarama. I've always loved them, and I love that sort of style of music because I would have loved living in the 80s. Like you say, it seemed much simpler and happier, and the music was better.
I'll tell you what, though, that iPhone in front of you wouldn't have existed, so that would have been tough for you. Hey, anyone listening, please leave a comment. What do you think of Bananarama's 1987 album, Wow? What can you tell us about it that we've missed, which is probably a whole stack? Thank you so much, Lee and Megs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.